So let's talk about these elements. There's something called humic acid, and there's a fulvic acid. The humic acid is a long-chain hydrocarbon that's basically insoluble. Bacteria can't eat it, plants can't use it, but it's a nice one to hold on nutrients. It's better than clay, but humic acid does work and it does hold nutrients. And the plants can get some. And so this helps in organic matter because it's humic acid. It's a long-chain hydrocarbon. And so that provides carbon and eventually can be broken down. It increases root vitality. There's a whole bunch of research on that to prove that. Improves nutrient uptake and all. You can see the chlorophyll, all the things that they have already proven in the industry. They're now switching here because years ago we kind of one of the first ones who break this out that this is the boy we want, not that one, because this is water soluble. If it's water soluble, there's few deposits of material. That boy is still here. It's washed out in many cases because most of the earth has been overlaid by some water in the past. The deposit we found had the least amount of water overlay. And how do we know that? It's because the compression of the water over these organic deposits turned them all to coal or oil. It's over centuries and centuries of pressure and heat turns these carbon systems into these other fractions. But here's what fulvic acid does, as you can read them. Metabolism, RNA for the plants, catalysts, activity of enzymes. You don't have enzymes, you don't have plant life working. All these other chlorophyll, denitrification by microbes, buffers pH of the soil. Here's where we're talking about why we did this, because in the desert soils, typically they have high pH soils, and you want to bring it closer to neutral. And where high acid soils, we want to go back to neutral, because high acid soils, you're going to lose many of the nutrients that the plants can pick up. So you really want to get to neutral 7. And so all these synthesized new minerals, chemically weathered organic substance, decomposes silica, and that one industry don't even know much about. But we have discovered some really important thing about silica for a later time. And to detoxify the pollutants, the fats, pesticide, herbicide, this is the guy that breaks down the pesticides. This is what does biodegrading. CBX is about anywhere from 20 to 50% fulvic acid. If you put this material in a Roundup, I think you have Roundup here that you use for herbicides. We got a farmer really mad at us one year because, he said you can back off your herbicide up to 50% if you add our products to it. Well, he did. But we didn't realize you cannot leave it overnight. In 24 hours, he did not have Roundup. And he sprayed the next day. None of the weeds died, and he blamed us, of course, what did our stuff? And we found out this breaks down pesticides in the tank. So when do not use our product with herbicides more than one day. You must spray it the same day. Do not hold it 24 hours because there's not going to be herbicides. Okay. What is the most powerful form of humic and fulvic acid? We talked a little bit about. It has to be ancient plant material. Because you can't find plant material today that is fully balanced because our soils have been depleted out of these minerals in our soils. So the only way you can do it is you got to go back ancient deposits of these plant materials. And there's a source called linodite. Linodite is a rare name. Other names are known by humates. You may have heard about humate deposits, lignite deposits. But linodite is a special deposit. And the reason why it is classified that way, because it's typically in a more arid region where there's not a lot of rainfall, because you remember the fulvic acid is water soluble. If you have a lot of moisture on a deposit, a lot of that stuff is washed away. It's not even available. So we derive it from an ancient plant material in a high desert. And it's called Leonardite because the guy, Dr. Leonard, found it, and that's why he named it after. Here's what it looks like, the deposit that we're using. This is stratified organic material. If you separate these materials, you'll find huge plant impressions. We found daisies about that size. It was unbelievable. In these plant stratus, huge plant life. When we measured it, we found that there are 72 minerals in that plant life. Every mineral that the body needs is in this plant life. So anciently, there was a time on this earth that grew enormous plant, fully balanced, and all the nutrients necessary for health. Plants, humans, animals. That whole thing is covered. That's piles of it. In high desert of Idaho. You see those piles? That's all, and there's some volcanic ash on top of it, kind of caps it. But you dig into it, that is what it looks like raw. Doesn't look like much, does it? But ooh, boy, is that powerful. So you're talking about millions of tons of that stuff piled up there, and nobody knows what to do with it. Some have dug it where we found it. Someone was digging out of the hill and they put it on the soil. 2 or 3 years ago, oh my gosh, this stuff is unbelievable. And that's how we got started. The scientists that I was working with, they discovered that we examined 72 different deposits around the United States. This is the only one surpassed every one we tested because of the uniqueness of what's there, and more in particular, ancient biology that are dormant. Stuff that was lost around the world is here. Because whatever took this plant life down to plant minerals was biology. And it had to be aerobic, not anaerobic, aerobic. Because all the plant life minerals are still there, including the fulvic acid. So all I have to do is take that, feed it to an animal, and boy, animals get healthy. But we just didn't feed it that way. We did to begin with, but our response was so slow, the farmer says, can't wait for that long. It took them 2 years to get results. Now we can get it in weeks. What we did, we took the material full of, we just named a few, but whatever that biology in there, lost biology, there are so many species in soil science has not classified. They have classified all the pathogenic organism because they designed a poison to kill every one of those guys. And that's why they know all of them. But the good guys don't bother them, so they don't study them. There's millions of species that don't know anything about them. They just know they're classified under certain, whether they're single cell or bacteria or fungus or cyanobacteria, they classify that way. Well, we take that material, those are somewhere in there, we know that, and plus a whole bunch of, we put it through a process. When an animal eats vegetation, it digests it with all kinds of acids, bases, biology, and breaks it all down so it can pull the energy out for their living cells. Nitrogens, carbons, and all the things that they eat for, right? Well, I got a deposit that no animal is going to eat. If you fed it that much, it's overdose. So we designed a mechanical animal. It takes no energy out of the system, but it digests it just like an animal. So I can feed it in, and what comes out the back? All good stuff. And we're taking, here's what we do. Animals have to have water. You've got to be warm. You got to have something to eat, so we had to feed because this thing's all dormant. All the biology is sitting there waiting. Say, well, nothing to do here. I'm going to sleep. So until you feed it, it comes alive. So we feed certain systems, and we stimulate them, and they all come alive. Now, what do you do with them? If I put them in a jug, I got live cultures. You know how long live cultures last? You got a shelf life problem, right? So we can't do that. It took us years to figure this out. I got to put them back to sleep. If I put them back to sleep, I can put them in a jug. Now I've got seeds, not sprouts. Try plant a wheat field of sprouts. Oh, you get some wheat, but a lot of the sprouts die in the process. But if I plant seeds, I can get every seed growing. Now all I have to do is get as many seeds into here that when I put it on the soil, and as soon as they find something to eat and work, boom, they explode. That's all we're doing. That's why it's not an invention. It's a discovery. We discovered how to do this. It took us years to figure this out. Trial and error. There was no science. No one wrote this stuff. They had the theory, but no one did the practicality of how to do this. And that's what our scientists worked and myself worked on for years. So in this process, we are extracting 5 basic systems that we see in this deposit that comes out. Of course, you can get the organic acid. You're always going to get a little humic, but we're really interested in this guy. Natural surfactants. These are, they're manufacturing natural surfactants. Basically, they're soaps. And what do you have soaps for? Break down the water tension, right? If you open up the soaps, the water gets in the soil. But it's a soap. It's synthetic. It doesn't do the job. But in this system, these fulvic acid and stuff act as a natural surfactant, so it opens up the soil like you put soap in it. We have a comparison of our product against all the surfactants on the market. There is no competition. Biostimulants. We call it that biostimulants because what we're feeding? Biology. That's the power. No man-made chemical or mechanical system can build a faster, more dynamic, more powerful system than biology. So we want biostimulants. We're feeding the biology. Natural enzymes. Enzymes break down the food for the biology to live, to eat. And so there's natural enzymes because it's from an organic source or a plant source. Natural buffers are things that in the soil that need to be buffered off. High salts, pesticides, chemicals that shouldn't be there. We can buffer them out. Some soils are high selenium. You have to buffer the seleniums. So we can actually buffer out many of the chemicals because biologically they tie them up. You know, if you have a high salt concentration, if you put compost on the salt area, you can tie up many of the salts. Awful expensive, but it can be done. So that's the function we work on. So this is the mechanism. Just put it on the soil. It works. Simple as that. Okay, there's something else that industry measures. It's called CECs. Anybody know what that means? It's cation exchange capacity. That means an element, there's nutrients or ions floating around and attaches to elements. If you took sand, if you have a high sand contact of your soils, remember that the left hand was brown and the right hand was black. Well, the brown had a lot of probably sand and silt and clay in it. And so they can measure in this form how much nutrients that sand can hold. And what they measure is 0 to 2 milliequivalents. I mean, they can hold so many ions around that sand because it's charged. Well, it's very small. That's why sand doesn't grow very good, a whole bunch of nutrients. You put nitrogen on sand, and where does it go? Water table. Doesn't hold anything. It just disappears. Silt. A little better. It's finer. And so it has more surface areas, so it goes up to 5. Clay is one of the smallest particle, and there's a lot of clay soils, and the reason why farmers like clay in it, because it holds a lot of nutrients. The problem with clay, it hangs on forever. It will not release. It hangs there, and it won't let it go until something they prefer comes along, and it kicks off other elements. That's why they put gypsum and all kinds of soil modifiers in to try to kick off some of the nutrients, phosphates, potassiums, and everything else, because they're trying to get this release from the seed. But the clay hangs on like tough, because they're not going to let go. But it holds on, a lot of nutrients. Humus. Humus is the final breakdown, or close to the final breakdown, of organic matter breaking down small enough particles, and these ions nitrates, phosphates, potassiums, calciums. They're looking for something to attach. If they don't attach, they disappear. But if you have humus in the soil, you can get up to 250. But if I can add humic acids, I get 300 to 500. And that's what there's a whole industry built around this little boy alone, because they can increase the CECs. The problem is humic acid is a long chain hydrocarbon, lots of spots to put nutrients on it, but it's insoluble. It takes a lot of effort to break that boy down. So, what's the next one which we focused on? 2 to 3 times of the CECs. And this boy is water soluble. If I can attach a nutrient to the fulvic acid, not only gets to the soil, feed the biology, it can also feed the roots and also the tissue directly into the plant. I can put fulvic acid, attach a nutrient, put it right on that plant leaf, goes right in. Humic acid can't do that, only fulvic. And so we have a whole foliar made around this concept of using that as a carrier, because it goes right in. And you know, a plant only has very small parts per million of all the nutrients. We're going to go into some more detail on that.